like to welcome everybody to our first morning session of Cup of Coffee with Joe, or Cup of Joe. So I asked Derek to join me this morning to talk about the new Envision product in the state of New York. We have been waiting for a competitive product manufactured by MassMutual that out of the gate competes, if not more than competes, wins in various markets and opportunities with the competition. So I wanted to chat with you about a couple of kind of unique features and benefits that the product has that other carriers do not. But also, fun fact is you were the first person in the state of New York in the entire company with MassMutual that sold the very first Envision variable annuity product.
Yep.
Is that right?
It is correct.
It is.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Yep. So that was
talk about that.
Yeah, December of the year that it was approved in New York State, which is that was the end of 2023. So it was a really, really nice case. It was a case that we had actually been working on for quite a while. We didn't know that the Envision product was going to be approved at that point, but we had been working with the clients for quite a while, establishing the need for variable annuities. The clients had significant wealth that they had built up over the years, but they did not have any sources of guaranteed income in retirement past Social Security. So what we really wanted to do was to try and add in additional sources of guaranteed income in retirement. So we had already built up the idea of using a variable annuity to fill that void, right? So one of the things that we tried to do in this particular case is to look at the benefits of all of the variable annuities that we have available to us. And once we got wind that the Envision product was going to become available in December of 2023, the stars just really aligned, again, because the clients were already very much on board with the concept. It was really just making sure that the product was going to be a fit. And in this particular case, it was really a slam dunk. Clients were in their mid-60s. So the husband was 66, wife is 67. And we put this product in force with the idea that the husband was going to turn on the income at his age 72. And one of the reasons for that is because there's an age band within the Envision product, and they get a big jump in income at age 72. And one of the things that we'll talk about today, but there's a big increase each and every year that you hold the product. So that's one of the big things with the Envision product as compared to a lot of the competitors, is every single year your guaranteed income percentage is going to go up. But again, to be able to get us to that 72 age band increase was a big deal. So like I said, it just, all the stars aligned, and it worked really, really well for clients.
So let's talk about that kind of rewarding, that the longer it sits there, that, you know, for the same fee comparable to other carriers where their income benefit rates or GMABs or DMWBs, those rates are set at the time of issue, where it's not the case here. And right. So looking at this chart, which is a great piece, by the way,
yep,
is, you know, kind of walk us through, you know, why in one particular, if you're really kind of earmarking a particular age, that there could be so much more of a difference in income
yep.
for the client simply by waiting that year, and maybe building a strategy that, like a ladder or some kind of a bridge that gets them to that point, because they're really rewarded for
yes.
waiting.
Yes, exactly. So for those advisors that are familiar with variable annuities with living benefits, you'll already be aware of that bridging the gap, Joe, like you had mentioned. Let me use the Jackson Perspective 2 product as an example. 65 is a big band for Jackson. So if you have a client that retires at 62, you have to find a way to get from 62 to 65. The product is not built to turn money on at 62 or 63. Getting to 65 is a huge deal. So the age bands in Envision work the same way. 62, 67, and 72 are three of the big ages with the Envision product when you get that bigger step up. So that is important. However, one of the reasons that the Envision product is so competitive is because there's more than just this magical 65 age, right? So something that we'll talk about later is the benefits of Envision for somebody that needs that guaranteed income prior to 65. What happens if maybe they want to retire at 59 or 60, and we need to start income. We can't bridge the gap all the way until age 65. Starting at 62 can be a huge benefit for people. And again, we have a heat map that we'll show later, just showing how Envision compares to other products, other carriers at different age bands. So in this particular case, going back to the case that I wrote in December of 2023, knowing that the client had other assets that we were having set aside, the client was going to be able to draw income from other sources prior to that 72 age, so that when they turn 72, it becomes, again, very, very competitive. And like you said, Joe, with the other carriers, we can tell you the second that you sign your name what your rate's going to be. But in the Envision product, every single year we wait, you get more and more and more guaranteed income for life based on the increasing withdrawal rates, which is, again, hugely important. So the nice thing about that is it allows us to say, okay, our plan today is to turn it on at 72, but really it's going to be dependent on how the market's doing, right? What's going on in your life? What are your income needs? The more that we can have flexibility for the client, the better it's going to be in the long run.
So in your example, comparing MassMutual's Envision product versus really any other competing carrier, in that example, is that if the day someone signs their name on that application, they're locked in at least at that starting rate. But in terms of fee assessment, it's always based on whatever the either the highest anniversary value or whatever the current market value is. So if you have two annuities with the same dollar amount kind of starting at the same time and they're growing based on market performance, you're theoretically paying the same fee, which is off of whatever the total value of the annuity is. The difference is when someone does want to turn on income, they're getting either that fixed contractual rate that they signed up for at the time, versus with retire pay is they're paying, again, theoretically the same fee structure, but they're being rewarded and they can end up having a lot more income off of that annuity. So they can be less dependent on other assets or have to stress other assets for more income, where this really could be the one thing in their portfolio that's increasing over time to help them with increased cost or cost of living or any other particular needs somebody has, without worrying about having to start to kind of siphon off income from multiple places.
Yep, absolutely.
Well,
and the Envision product as well, you can go up to 80% equity exposure within, which is really, really nice. Some of the other carriers minimize how much you can put into equity exposure. So having up to 80% means that there is potential for growth. And the other thing that we typically are going to advise people to do is to add in that quarterly step up rather than the annual step up. So with an annual, you only have one chance per year.
So you have to catch it at the right time.
You have to catch it at the right time, exactly. And we all know the market is completely unpredictable. If it's doing great 11 months in, and then that last 30 days it craters, you're probably not going to be able to get that lock in. Where if you had the quarterly, then there was 3 other times throughout the year, for a total of 4, that you can increase that benefit base. And again, that's a permanent increase. That benefit base can never go down as long as you don't take out any excess withdrawals.
Okay, correct. And some of the other features of the Envision product, the terminal illness rider feature. So if life gets in the way and something happens kind of unplanned from a medical perspective, MassMutual waives all surrender charges, for a terminal illness or confinement to a nursing home or confinement to at-home care, which I think is a great feature as well, knowing that, if something does happen, which there's always a reservation, if something does happen medically, what if I need access to this money? Not every carrier allows for a terminal illness or a confined, waiver, which allows some flexibility.
Absolutely.
And also too, in terms of the issue age is we have a surprisingly a really high issue age, maximum issue age on this product, which was great kind of coming out in New York, thinking we would not necessarily be able to go up to age 85.
Right. I was surprised, pleasantly surprised.
And that definitely opens up some opportunity, as far as the Americans. You mentioned the heat map, so let's look at this for a second. I've always grown up to think that green is always good and red's always bad. So can you walk through this piece and what does this really look like? Because it does show us versus multiple competitors.
Yes, absolutely. And it's funny because I know I've heard from a couple of people that this may be the most transparent piece that MassMutual has ever put out, because it actually does show us, again, in a competitive environment, how our product does against their product head to head, right? So the really nice thing about this heat map is it shows where we win, right? And I had mentioned this briefly earlier, but you can see the first 5 years from 60 to 64 of this output are all dark green. So what that means is if you have a client that's relatively young, maybe they changed jobs in their 50s and they need to start planning for some retirement income, and their plan is, okay, hey, maybe I will start it at 62, 63, whatever it is. Envision is going to be a slam dunk. There's really not a situation that another product is going to be more competitive. And the reason really comes down to the fact that, again, you have that age 62 band that other products simply don't have. So if you can start money being funded into this product in the client's early to mid 50s with the intention of accessing these funds in the early to mid 60s, again, extraordinarily competitive. I have another couple of cases that I'm working on right now that fit that bill. Like I said, job change or maybe a liquidity event for clients that are in their early 50s. This just makes a ton of sense.
And to your point too, is there are a lot of folks that are de-risking their portfolios because of the concern of, what's the election, potentially going to do to the market? Will that create more volatility? Fixed interest rates, are we going to see fixed interest rates decrease a bit? So, folks are hesitant of really going into the market or staying diversified in the market.
Yeah.
This really kind of creates some level of comfort to know that, regardless of performance, they know that their withdrawal benefit rate, depending on where they fall within that scale, really just works, it almost counterbalances that to some perspective, where they don't have to retreat all in one spot versus completely in another spot.
Yeah.
By giving them some security of withdrawal.
Absolutely. And to your point as well, not only are people concerned about, okay, what happens next from a market perspective, but generally people have had a very good run here over the last 5 years. I mean, really 15 years, right? We've had a very, very good run in the markets. Now is a good time to take some risk off your portfolio. If you've done really, really well recently, great time to say, hey, let's lock some of this in. But you're not necessarily saying, well, I don't want to do a SPIA or a DIA to fully lock up that capital. You get the added benefit of saying, yes, I want the flexibility that a variable annuity offers me with the guaranteed income, right? It's a cake and eat it too scenario almost. SPIAs and DIAs have their place, of course, but that lack of liquidity can be a real killer.
Exactly. So let's talk about some tools. Like there is a tremendous amount of tools that are available on field. One of the things I came across this morning, which is the retire pay calculator, right? Which was originally the kind of initial version it was a really wild Excel spreadsheet. And unless you were Einstein, it was very difficult to figure out. This is a much more user-friendly, I guess. How would you use the calculator?
Yeah.
What would you use it for?
Absolutely. I think the great way to use the calculator is in competitive scenarios where you want to get a good sense of how do we stack up, right? How do we stack up in a hypothetical scenario versus really any other company's product? And again, the comparison here would be a variable annuity with a living benefit rider. So again, let's just use the Jackson perspective too, simply because that's the one we've been talking about. So all you need to know is essentially the income bands that would be available at Jackson. So that's the only piece of information that you maybe wouldn't already have. Obviously, you already know your client's information, you know how much money you're thinking about putting into the product, and then you know when you're going to project that income starts, that guaranteed income starts. So the only thing, again, that you need to know is, okay, what is the payout for Jackson at age 65 or 70 or 75, again, whatever it is, or whatever carrier you're using. And the really nice thing is we have all that information. So we have all that in-house. You don't have to call Jackson. You don't have to get an illustration. That's, I think, where people can stumble is, are you really going to call 7 different carriers and get 7 different illustrations to plug all this into your system, where we can do this all in-house now with the calculator.
This is all pre-sale, right? So this kind of levels the playing field to give you enough kind of data to suggest, hey, if we are leading versus other carriers, or carriers leading versus where we are.
Correct.
To your point, so you're not calling multiple carriers, getting multiple illustrations, and now you're really, got this whole kind of bingo board effect.
Yes.
Like, all right, let me kind of look at, Now I've got to really dissect each carrier to look at the internal expenses. This really levels the playing field on a pre-sale basis and does a lot of homework for you on the front end.
Correct. Completely agree. And again, the nice thing is we can walk through the calculator and look at various different scenarios. Okay, how much do we want to project from a return perspective on the markets? Do we want to show the market getting 2% or 7% or 5%? And again, it will show you, the output will show you how we do as compared to different products. So again, I know you had mentioned the Excel spreadsheet. It used to be very clunky. Now the user interface is just so much nicer and so much more intuitive. I think it's a great tool if you're considering a variable annuity with a living benefit. I think you have to use it.
So would you use that kind of really on the front end? So in terms of discovery, if you're really looking at this may be the best, in terms of best interest, maybe putting money into a variable annuity with an income benefit rider, start there first and just look at, all right, what are, where does MassMutual Envision really stack up versus some other competitors, and then kind of really build, build the illustration or build the case for it, but really start there.
Yep. That's exactly what I've been doing. So like you said, during that fact-finding approach, during that data gathering approach, if you see a scenario where, again, maybe the client's only guaranteed income in retirement is Social Security, maybe they have a small pension or something, but they have some investable assets and they're in there, let's say anywhere from 52 to 70, somewhere in that general area. I think you have to start with a calculator just to see how we stack up. And again, we can compare it to any other product that you like. So to me, it's a great way to shorten the amount of work that you have to do on the front end. Like you said, having 7 different illustrations would be overwhelming, right? Even one illustration has a lot of data in it, let alone multiplying that by 7.
So you kind of go down this process. We go through discovery using the calculator. You build the kind of purpose, present to the client. Client moves forward, which is fantastic. But it's also too, this is a tier 1 product, and having a tier 1 variable annuity product, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
Which includes all secondary compensation. So AAA, it helps stack up for AAA, DOA, contract. It weights 100% towards contract validation as well as recognition. So this is a home run.
Absolutely.
Kind of across the board. It competes not only on the short-term side in terms of compensation, but for those that are qualifying for AAA or at higher bands of AAA, you really start to look at the multiple that this from an economic standpoint. Where sometimes that could be kind of a bit of a driver with products is that this product's really, really priced to win from an advisor perspective, a firm perspective, as well as a client perspective as well.
Yeah, I think that's something to really keep in mind, Joe, is I have heard some pushback, and frankly, let's be honest, people want to know how much you're going to get paid, right? And I've gotten some pushback. Well, it's only paying me 3.2, but at the end of the day, you hit the nail on the head. It's not just the amount of money in your pocket, because this is not just 1099 income, right? It's how can we see what else are you getting for this?
Exactly.
And like you just rattled them off, but that's so important to keep in mind. This is not just, getting one check and calling it a day.
Right. That's awesome. So, to kind of put things in a nutshell is that we have a great product that we've been waiting for a very, very, very long time.
Yes.
It competes against all the big carriers that we've been doing a lot of business with. It has some unique features and benefits that rewards clients, that are looking for guaranteed income at some future date, where that rate continues to increase. Where a lot of other carriers, they don't have that option. So that's unique. We have the terminal illness waiver that in the event that an annuitant is sick or becomes disabled or is confined to a nursing home, MassMutual, without any question, will allow any withdrawals without assessing a surrender charge, which I think creates a lot of comfort because, again, life is certainly unpredictable.
Sure.
But also when you start to look at, again, some of the tools. So whether it's the calculator, there's a lot of point of sales material. There's a lot of client-driven material. Yep. But also on the FieldNet website for Envision, there was a ton of market analysis in terms of the S&P and the Dow and, the history of performance of the marketplace. Really just kind of get your head kind of really kind of full with thoughts and ideas and, different ways to allocate funds, kind of going into this contract as well. I found it to be really, really well stacked up as far as just data information that you need, that you really don't have to dig really far to get, information the way it's really laid out on I'd feel that.
Yep. I totally agree. And as I mentioned earlier, one of the big benefits is being able to have that 80% equity exposure in there too. So this is not something that we're just planning on creating income from the original premium contribution. We want that to grow. We want to be able to have a significantly higher benefit base. So not only are we having an increase from the guaranteed annual withdrawal percentage, but we're also getting the increase on the benefit base side. So to me, there's a lot of features to be happy about with this product.
That's a great story. It's a great story all the way around. So, well, thank you again. I appreciate the opportunity to kind of go back and forth with you. But again, you were the first person to sell one in the entire state of New York. I think there should be a trophy for that, right? There should always be a trophy for something that will never happen again.
Right.
So congratulations there. And
like the inaugural Cup of Joe.
That's right. So thanks again for spending time again. And
yeah,
cheers.